Okay, welcome back. We have day 2 here on our pencil project. And we started working on this in the last class. And in the last class, we got our little moon down. And with our moon, we went a little outside of the line. And we got this area down. Just to remind you, when we did this area down here, we went up to this little top cloudy area that we made. And in order to get this, we mixed lemon yellow and cadmium together. And that is how we got this kind of cool yellowy color. The other thing is that if you're starting this and you don't like how light this turned out, and by the way, I think that mine is pretty good, although I do want to make this bottom area here a little bit darker, I think. But if you want to add more, if you feel like this just isn't bright enough that you know what you want, you can add water into your mixture because it's dried and rejuvenate it, and then go ahead and add another layer on top of this, okay? But we did do this already, and then at the very end, you were told to go ahead and you were told to just use the cadmium yellow, which is this darker one, and do a little line up here at the top. And after you painted a line, I wanted you to rinse out your brush, and then take your brush and on the bottom part of the line, use just water and kind of smudge out the bottom part of the line so that it wasn't so much of a harsh line on the bottom. Now, before I start in today, I want to go ahead and I want to make this a little darker, and to be honest, I don't think the other class got started on this. So what I'm doing is I'm re-wetting the whole area. Because I'm starting this on another day, this will not be wet like it was when we were working on it. So I need to re-wet this whole area again. And to get this little area down here darker, which you see on these guys up here, it does get pretty dark. I'm going to just use this burnt sienna that's over here. So I'm gonna make a little tiny puddle in my burnt sienna color with some water. And I'm going to use that, and I'm not even brushing, I'm just dabbing right now and kind of dropping this in there just to make it a little bit darker. Now, some people, you realize I need a little bit more water, I didn't make enough of a puddle. Some people will want to bring this up a little higher around the edge. Some people will not, but the thing that you want to keep in mind is that I don't want this to be like a solid line going across. So this is hard for some people. I want you to come up in some areas and down in other areas, and go ahead at the very bottom, and that's what you can kind of go back and forth in. And so I'm just kind of creating like this little bottom area that's going to be happening down there. Okay, now that I am done with that, the next part that I really want to do is I really want to do this sky up here. But the thing is that this here is a little wet right there. So I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to do the sky. I'm going to wait just a couple minutes for that edge to dry up a little bit before I go up into that. And before I do, I want to take this, I want this edge here of my brown to be a little bit more soft. So I'm using just water, and I'm just dabbing on top of that little edge, just so that it becomes a little bit more soft. I use a little bit more water and take some of that off because there's a ton of water on there now. Kind of going like that. There we go. So because we're going to wait for this, and I really do want to come back to this in a minute, we're going to skip over here to the leaf. So what I want you to do is we're going to mix lemon yellow and cerulean blue. We're going to mix it right on the paper though. I know that's crazy. So what I would like for you to do is let's start with lemon yellow. And oh, you know what I didn't do that I would like to is I did not kind of prime my watercolors up. So I'm gonna go grab a little tiny squirt bottle, and I'm just gonna give my watercolors a little squirt, because that does kind of help to get them started. Otherwise, I have to use so much water all the time to get these started. And remember, you don't ever want to squirt like by your stuff, so I'm going to do it over on this side. And this is nice. You can see it's just a little bit of water here just to get them started. So if you haven't done this, you might want to go ahead and prime up your watercolors. Okay, so I made a little puddle in my lemon yellow. Mix that up in there. And if you noticed, I mean, I'll be honest, mine had a little bit of other color in there, I don't know what, so my lemon yellow is kind of a greenish yellow now, which is interesting, but that's fine. I'm not gonna care that much. You can care a lot if you would like to. If you want to ever clean these things out, if other colors get in them, the best time to do it is when it's dry. You just give it like a little bit of a wipe, and then you wipe it out with paper towel, but I am not going to do that. So if you notice now, I'm making another little puddle in my cerulean blue, so that this gets a little puddle in itself. Now what we're doing is we're just going to be adding on a little bit of a base layer to this, okay? I feel like I'm getting a pretty decent puddle of both of these. Okay, now, this is going to be, since we're blending right on, I want a bigger brush because I want to be able to blend well. I'm literally going with a number 10. I know that's scary for a lot of you. And remember, always wet your brush. We're going to be starting with the lemon yellow in the top right-hand corner. And we're going to be then going to the cerulean blue in the bottom left. And we're going to pull both of them in a diagonal to the middle area. Okay, so what I mean by that is, I'm going to take this lemon yellow now. I'm going to go on a diagonal to the middle. I need to pick up a little bit more here. Go on this diagonal to the middle area. So kind of, you know, you're going from one corner to the other. Then I'm going to stop, rinse this out. Grab some of this cerulean blue. Start down in this corner. And I'm going to go up to that one. So when they blend together, if you are big on color theory, which you know I am, pushing down my washi tape, felt like it was kind of coming up there. When the two mix, when these two areas mix, they're going to make a green. Now, the thing is, if you let your paint sit for too long, what I mean by that is if you let the yellow sit for too long, it's going to make a harsh line right here. So I was quick about this. I went in quick. I want you to do one more layer on top of this. If you get little hairs like this, do not worry, okay? Don't pick it out. It becomes so much worse if you pick it out. Okay, I'm going back in with this lemon yellow, coming in from the top corner. I'm bringing it down, rinsing out my brush, getting some of this cerulean blue, which I feel like doesn't want to pick up so much for me, but kind of does. Okay, and I'm going over the yellow, creating a blend in the middle of like this little greeny color in here. So it's going to go like yellow to a green to a blue. And if you're wondering, yes, we are going to be doing layers on top. Okay, so to be honest, I'm going to let this dry and see what happens. You have to trust the process. So as this dries, remember this will become a lot lighter in color too as well. So now that I feel like this over here, I'm doing pretty good on this. Okay, so I'm going to come back and do the sky. Now I'm not going to wet the paper first. I'm going to paint on dry paper. And a lot of times I've told you, oh, painting on dry paper means details. Well, there's another thing. If you notice, we painted on dry paper over here. Painting on dry paper also means painting little tiny details, but also means working quickly, okay? I need you to make a little mixture, and we're gonna be using a couple blues, and I notice all my little areas are dirty. So I am using just water, and I am literally brushing around in here with just water so that I can clean this, because this is too green for me. I need to kind of get a little area. You do not need to become overly crazy with the cleaning, just enough so that it mainly looks pretty good. You are going to be mixing for this sky here, ultramarine blue, which is this one right here. So I'm getting a bunch of this out. And I don't want just a little bit, because I need to paint this whole sky. So I just got a little dot of blue on there. So ultramarine blue, that's pretty good. Now you're thinking, that's probably not enough to paint the whole thing. Well, to be honest, probably not, but I am also going to mix some of this cerulean blue in. But I do need to rinse this out so I don't contaminate my cerulean blue. Load it up with a bunch of water, make a little puddle in there so I can bring a bunch of this over into this ultramarine. Now if you notice on here, it says cerulean blue is a cool color, ultramarine is a warm color. So what's nice is when you mix these two together, they create something that's kind of an in-between. Kind of tones the warm up and the cool down. It makes a real pretty color. Okay, this looks pretty good to me. Okay, so make sure you mix it all. Now, when we're going to paint this, I'm going to explain first what we're going to do, because we are working quickly. Make sure your washi tapes are down. I realized over here that mine had come up. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to be painting halfway down, and halfway, I mean from here to here, halfway down the white area, okay? So I'm gonna paint to about here, going back and forth. I'm gonna start up here, go all the way down, then I'm gonna stop, rinse my brush out, and with just water, pull the rest of this down so it goes from a dark to a light. We're creating an ombre effect, okay? So, make it this. This, I'm taking this, I'm going about the halfway point like I talked about. Now I want to rinse this quickly with just water in there now. I'm going to just pull the rest of this down. I go right up against that line and kind of bring some of this down now. Paint that. Now if you remember, when you're painting this, there is a way to kind of help pull this down, and that is, I have to take this off. Take this off. That is using gravity to help you. So if I tilt the board up a little bit, it'll kind of help pull this stuff down here. Now I'm going up, and then I'm going to pull this color down. And then I'm going to rinse my brush one more time and put a little bit more of this lighter color just right down. And I want to make sure that I have this, even though you might not notice it, if there's a little bit of the light showing through, you will notice it. It'll be like so stark down here where this and this meet. A lot of times people forget. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good. If you feel like, I want to do another layer and make this a little bit darker, you could do that, but for now, we're just going to pause, so right there, okay? All right, so we are going to now, this is in a state of drying over here. This is in a state of drying. We're gonna go back to move, okay? And now we're going to be kind of putting a little bit of our background into the middle. I need to bring these back for this. Bring this back too. Okay, so for the moon, we're going to, even though you have a purple, I'm going to make a purple. And as you can tell, I kind of have the purple already in this zone here, so I'm not gonna even clean this. I'm just gonna make my purple in that zone. And I will tell you, I'm going to go back to a number 6. I am done with the very big one. I'm gonna just keep it to the side. Remember to not leave your brushes sitting in the water. That's a really bad habit. What happens is that these brushes are made out of wood, and this expands, and then all of this blue cracks and pops off, and it's not good for the brush and for the hairs. So if you are waiting, just set it there on the side, okay? Don't leave it in your cup of water. So back to a number 6. I'm going to mix 2 colors to make a purple. So I'm going to be mixing ultramarine blue, one of my favorites, okay? And then I'm also going to be combining that with alizarin crimson. Okay, so I'm gonna dip this in the water. I'm going to wet this. Bring some of this over into here. What's interesting is, if you are ever bored and you want to really figure out what all your colors actually, do, a nice thing to do is to make a little color chart. So what would be interesting too is that the difference between mixing these 2 colors together, the alizarin and ultramarine, and then mixing like the alizarin with the Prussian, is very different purples, very different purple colors. Even this one too, so you get a little bit of different everything. Okay, this is a pretty good looking purple. If you feel like your purple is too blue, then you put a drop of red in. If you feel like your purple is too red, like it's kind of like a ruddy pinky, then you want to put a little bit of blue back in there, okay? But I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm gonna explain what we're gonna do first before we go into this. So before we go into this little moon area, I am going to have we're going to be painting the top corner. We're gonna be going over here, okay? And we're going to be pulling this down with just water to the top of the cloud line. Now, to be honest, I'm almost thinking that we should cover this before we go any further with some of our masking fluid. Now, if you remember, we used masking fluid. Let's see if we can kind of come up here. We used it to kind of mask off areas. And I think that this would be a perfect opportunity for you to understand like why and when to use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a garbage brush. Remember, we're not using these for masking fluid, it's glue. I'm going to get a garbage brush and the masking fluid. And I have a little bit of Dawn soap. So, the garbage brushes, if you remember, they are spray painted. I spray painted them purple and green. So if they're trashed, it's not a big deal because they're very inexpensive. I'm going to put a little drop of glue onto the brush first because that way the glue will not, stick to it permanently. Okay, and I'll just wipe off the rest there. Now I have this. Now, before you use this, you'll notice in the bottom here, it gets like this dark blue. You just want to gently shake it. You don't want to shake it like crazy because then a ton of air goes inside of it. Okay? And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to paint with it. The problem is if I leave this open, it starts to dry. So you always have to cap it. So the nice thing about this being blue is that I can see where it's going. If you buy this and it's clear, doesn't really show up as well and you can't really see where it's going. And this, it's called drawing gum. It's actually not called a glue, okay? If you do not cover this area all the way, when we go on top of this and paint, it's literally going to show up. So my advice to you is to make sure that you have covered this. Now I wish that I would have erased my pencil a little bit more before I went ahead and Covered it with the yellow because now it's on there forever, but I'll just make sure, I might have to do some touch-ups like at the very end, like, cause the background is pretty dark purple. So the thing is that, you know, moral of the story, try to remember to erase your lines a lot better. Okay, now that I'm done with this, I'm going to just wipe this off first before I stick it in my water, put it in my water, and now I wipe it off and it's ready for the next person. So we're gonna have to spend a little bit of time in class today fixing that up, okay? Now, people always say, well, how long does it take for this stuff to dry? Not forever, but it's not great. I want to point out something here while we're waiting here. There is a line that has formed from the water because this got wet, and when your paper gets wet it expands and it puffs up, and when it dries, because there's tape on it, it pulls it tight and then flat. So these are things that people say they hate watercolor because watercolor is wonderful, it's easy to take around, the paints are easy to take around, but it does require constant problem solving. And this is what happens with people. They don't want to try to figure out the extra time to like figure out, okay, how to get around this problem and that kind of thing. The one thing that I will say is that while we are waiting here for this little, it's already getting pretty tacky, I'll be honest. I think that mine, and now I didn't put it on really super thick. So to be honest, I think mine is ready. So I'm gonna go back to this purple that I made, okay? And I am going to pull the purple down. I'm going to start up in the top left corner here. I am going to pull it down to the top of the cloud line, which is right here for me, because that's where I stopped with this cloud line. Okay. So I'm going to pull from here and I'm going to stop here. Okay, so the other thing is that I don't want a ton, so I'm just going to paint just this corner only. Now, if you notice, we're painting on dry paper again, so what does that mean? Oops. Oops. That means that we're working quick. Now, I just made a mistake right here. Maybe with the rest of you, I'll have you paint with this. What's still wet? Okay, I'll put a little bit more in here. Okay. Yeah, that seems to be going over a little bit better. Now what's funny is because I used soap on the brush first, do you see all the little bubbles forming? That's great. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit of purple over here. Now, the goal here is that this corner is the most purple. So I'm going to keep doing a few layers until I get into this purple corner over here. Maybe I'll add in a little bit more of this color too to it and make it a little bit deeper. There we go. Do more of a bluish purple. Okay. Got this. Rinse it out with just water now. I kind of pull the rest. Okay. And we're going to stop for today.